Oh, Max, I can still see you. Hi there.
Hi, thanks everyone for joining. Yeah, sorry if the audio wasn't as loud as it could be, but yeah, I think yeah, we had everything turned up all the way, so yeah. I think we have Elliot is going to say a few words about the exhibition now and the performance, and then we'll open it up if anyone has any specific questions they want to ask Elliot. Yeah, they can go ahead and do that, but I'll hand it over to Elliot now.
Okay, thanks, Max. Thanks for having us here, and it was nice to get to be a part of this. This was sort of I did a live stream actually here from my cactus garden back in, I guess it was in May or June, kind of when this was still a fairly novel thing, and now I think people are getting a little bit more used to it. But obviously, there's still a lot of limitations with audio and video streaming capabilities, and so I appreciate being able to try and do this on Zoom. And it was, for me, it's a little bit of an experiment. This show was supposed to happen in April, and we had kind of planned sort of a little bit of a mini festival with kind of different performers coming into the space each weekend, and the sort of intention for the show was to have this kind of experience of togetherness in that space. And Shane's gallery is a really beautiful kind of huge, Jules always refers to it as this kind of cathedral to art, and the space it's just beautiful light. It's a big open space, and it has this kind of almost like church-like reverb in the main room. And so when we were thinking about putting the show together, it was just sort of exciting to think about being able to kind of install all of these sound sculptures in a space like that and kind of utilize the architecture and just be able to kind of really get to understand some of these instruments. The polygongs, which are those large hanging plates that there are 3 that are kind of suspended on armatures, and then 7 that are a piece that kind of span one of the trusses of the building. They really have this kind of like incredible low end resonance, and because the shapes don't have any parallel sides and that they have all these different angles, when you play them, if you play them in kind of different corners of the plate, you get these different overtones, but it's happening at this very like super low and bassy end of the spectrum. And so just being in the presence of those vibrating metal plates is just such a, you know, incredibly different experience than watching it on this you know, streamed kind of degraded audio and visual thing. So I want to thank everybody for being here, and also sort of apologize for not being able to, you know, it's such a different thing to be able to kind of put your head up to something that's just kind of moving with so much vibrational energy. But you know, this is kind of one of the challenges of this world that we're living in, is how do we kind of share experience, and how do we try to kind of relay these sort of vibrational messages, essentially, which is kind of what music and most art is, I believe. But for me, when thinking about this show, it's sort of interesting to it was interesting to just kind of completely reconfigure the show to try to make it exist in the world in some way where you can't come together. Most of what I do as a musician, you know, I've been a musician that's been touring for the last 20 years, and so that kind of just simple act of like getting together with other musicians is very like central to not only my professional life, but my you know, that is my life essentially. So you know, if you kind of take that out of the realm of possibility, you're forced to sort of reckon with all of this stuff on a different level. And so it's been interesting to just sort of be doing the show kind of just very family style with Shane and Jules and Avery. And we had the luxury of the gallery being closed for the month before the show opened. So I was able to kind of install the show and kind of really try to figure out what was happening in the space and what was happening with these kind of this new set of sculptures and instruments that I've built. So I guess in thinking about the show, just, you know, the whole thing really did shift when you take that kind of like communal element out of the mix. And I guess a lot of these instruments are kind of producing like this very like incredible kind of like high energy bass frequency. And so they actually have the ability to make the other instruments in the room resonate. And, you know, as the room kind of, as you play the instruments in the room, the whole room really resonates. The building is vibrating, the beams are vibrating, the windows are vibrating, you know. And so there is a real kind of like physicality to the music that's happening in there, which is something that you really have to kind of be in the space to experience. So I don't mean to just be apologizing for the, you know, that element being missing, but trying to figure out how to kind of convey some of the things that are exciting about the show that kind of can exist on a different level. And so for me, those polygon sculptures kind of they operate in a lot of different kind of processes where, you know, they're sort of essentially cutouts from a aluminum sheet. So they're a line, and then they're a shape, and then they're a tool to make these prints, and then they're, you know, used kind of in this drawing practice, and then they're turned back into instruments, and then they're hung, and then they're kind of these moving sculptures. And as they kind of move through the space, they're creating sound, they're creating different resonances within each other. They're kind of having this shifting playfulness, even though they're these really like large, heavy things. So it's been really fun to kind of put the impetus on this documentation and trying to create work that can kind of translate through these other media, and you can get a sense of it through video. We made a flip book of the shapes kind of moving through space, and so I guess, you know, the show kind of becomes for me about different things in this kind of different social scenario that we're in, where we're kind of thinking about how are we connecting each other, how are the sort of like vibrations, and this vibration is such a word that it has a kind of hippie connotation, but really there's a sort of physicality to the music that's happening in the space, and it's interesting to just kind of go through this process of kind of struggling to try to convey that to people and have a shared experience where people are able to kind of experience elements of that. So recording and, you know, streaming media, that's a whole other conversation, you know, that is maybe for another day. But everything that I'm doing, even with the documentation, I'm always leaning on physical media, and I like shooting on film, and I like recording on tape and having these kind of actual physical properties to the way that you're kind of making and documenting the work. So I guess that's, you know, that's been kind of another challenge, but also another interesting problem as we've been able to kind of like live in the space and use the instruments and use the gallery as sort of a installation and kind of be in a residency there. And so I guess that's a little bit about the show. It is sort of funny to just be sort of talking into the void. Is anybody still here? Does anybody have a question or
yeah, there is
complaint?
Someone asked, is this inspired by Southeast Asian gong music?
Definitely. There's I'm a huge like fan of gamelan. It was something that I went to I played in the gamelan ensemble at University of Michigan when I was there, and I'm a big collector of gamelan records. So that's definitely something that kind of is in the list of inspirations. But you know, I'm certainly not I'm not an ethnomusicologist, even though I did spend kind of time studying that music. But I love gamelan music very much.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone else has any other questions, but
I guess I could we filmed these performances yesterday, and it was just kind of a, you know, we have been kind of filming throughout the time of the show. We'll do another show tomorrow with a record label that I work with in Los Angeles called Leaving Records. And no disrespect to Zoom, but the Twitch platform has a little bit, I think, better just sort of infrastructure for playing audio. So I think we may have a little bit better luck with the recording tomorrow, which will be at the same time if anybody else is interested in hearing another kind of set of performances from the show.
I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit about how this overlaps with your other music endeavors, or just do any of these instruments sort of make their way into other types of performance spaces, or if you could just talk about that at all.
Yeah, I've been kind of I've been touring in a number of different bands kind of throughout my life, but the last few years I've been playing in a band with my sister called Wild Bell. I had a band called Nomo that was kind of utilizing a lot of the instruments that I have built, but this is definitely kind of like a slightly new chapter for me, kind of building these more large scale instruments. And we did a show, basically we've been kind of setting up these sculptural installations and then recording a ton. I see Doug was asking if we did recordings in the space. And yeah, we've been recording a lot. And so the space has a really beautiful kind of natural reverb. There's a lot of reflective surfaces with the concrete floor and stuff. But this music is very generative, and improvisation has been kind of central to my musical practice for a long time. I kind of came up playing clarinet and saxophone and studying jazz, and just it's kind of a really nice opportunity just to be able to be set up in the space and recording and kind of writing music and kind of figuring out what some of these instruments do. The beam marimba, which is hooked up to that sound system, has this really incredible low end, and so I've been kind of trying to integrate all of these different aspects of my music making, which is sort of a like improvisational jazz background and playing the saxophone, this interest in and love for percussion music of, you know, all different origins, and then, you know, kind of trying to understand different sort of like metallurgy processes and the making of these instruments. You know, a lot of different materials are in the show. There's these large wooden beams, the piece bells, which are an alloy of bronze, and we've been using melted bullet casings in those bells. The polygongs are aluminum plate. And then the tongue bells, which are those sort of steel tube bells, those are made from steel. So all of these different materials have these kind of different resonant properties. And you know, you end up with all of these different kind of alternative tuning systems and building different sets of instruments that sort of have their own specific sound world. And so it's kind of a luxury to be able to spend basically 2 months in a space where everything can be set up and documented and recorded, and it's a little bit like learning a new language every time kind of a new set of instruments is created, and we have to kind of figure out what the vocabulary is. I've been playing with Eric and Quinn, who were in the video, for a very long time, probably 15 years. And so we've been doing this sort of improvisational percussion music together for a very long time. And so we kind of have a set of systems and signals and gestures to kind of communicate as we're kind of like moving through different phrases and kind of sections. But to me, this is kind of where I am happy to live, and can see kind of myself being excited to be working for the next chapter of my life, and hopefully career. But it's a very, to me, it's very fertile ground, and there's all these kind of different avenues to explore with material and you know, intonation and these different ways that all of these sets of instruments kind of interact.
Thank you. Yeah, there's there's 2 more questions. One is how does the body in Resonant Body inform the work, aside from a human actually playing them?
I guess I've been thinking, where do you see these questions? You have special access to questions.
Oh, also the Q&A. Yeah.
The body, I guess, I've yeah, I think the this has been a time of fairly intense isolation for me of the last 6 months, and so I've kind of been thinking about the various things that basically the various forces that sort of inhabit our bodies, and the way that kind of energy is transferred between us as people, between us in sort of generations. It's basically 1 year ago today. I lost my dad was killed in a car crash, and I've been kind of thinking about the sort of echoes of his energy and life, but in thinking about the show, the show is very, the body isn't really represented in the show, in the work itself, and it sort of requires a person to sort of activate these sculptures in a way. So to me, there is a very kind of direct conversation between the way that the things are made and the way that they kind of inhabit the space, and the way that they get activated. And so I guess, I don't know if that's a very direct answer to that question, but I also have been kind of thinking about that set of instruments as a sort of body of sort of sound making devices, and I've been thinking about sort of our own kind of collective voices and the way that we are able to kind of like amplify each other's thoughts and ideas, and as we kind of realize the need to sort of formulate, just as a lot of our kind of notions of identity and self are getting challenged, or just kind of broken down in this in the world that we're in right now. To me, that those were just kind of the things that I've been thinking about it, putting the show together.
Yeah, that makes sense. There's a couple more questions. Are you up for a few more?
Sure.
One here is, when I stopped by the gallery, it was mentioned that you sometimes use an oscilloscope to measure the tones produced by the gongs. I was just curious, is this primarily to sort of orient yourself to the location of the tones spatially, or to understand another aspect of the sound?
To me, it's just sort of when, especially with the larger plates, you end up using these very sort of industrial processes to make them. And I'm not really, I guess I sort of lean towards more experimentation than science in my process. And so this is sort of a way of trying to, you look at this thing that you've made, which is sort of drawn and then created, and then you kind of backpedal and say, okay, well, what's this actually doing? So to me, it's an interesting way to try to contextualize it and start to look at the actual musical and physical harmonic relationships and say, okay, well, this, so it's kind of just a way of studying the thing that was created, and so I'm kind of trying to become a little bit more scientific in the process, and understanding what are the actual physics of the frequencies that are happening. And so it's interesting because you start to realize when there are very close harmonic relationships, you do get these very just beautiful physical resonances, and the sort of intervallic relationships between different notes have all of that stuff is really rooted in a very physical property of standing waves in a plate. And so to me, all of that's just beautiful. The sort of the math and the sort of the way that music is mathematical, and it relates to architecture, and it relates to all of these very simple ratios. So it's kind of just a part of my study of intonation and musical vibration, basically.
That's great. Thank you. I think there's one more. It's more of a comment. Visually and sonically, it was amazing. It was the perfect antidote to all the weirdness of the last 2 days, let alone the last 6 months. So.
That's from Doug. Doug is
Yeah.
a friend from Michigan. Hi, Doug. We worked together in one of the great record stores, Encore Recordings, for many years in Ann Arbor. But all right, well, thank you everybody for tuning in and for listening. And you know, we'll be working. I think, you know, we tried to make this sort of as live as possible given the Zoom format. So we filmed this yesterday and turned it around overnight. And I think that, you know, as the show wraps up, there's 2 weekends left to see the show. We'll still be kind of recording and documenting and then mixing all of the stuff that we've recorded and done here. So I think, you know, sometime in the next, I don't know, I want to say year, but the backlog of projects keeps piling up. But hopefully there'll be some really nice, you know, there'll be more videos and more, and hopefully a record and stuff from the show. So check back for that later.
Yeah, thank you all. Thank you, Elliot and Shane and Jules, for helping make this happen. And for anyone that wants to stick around, we're gonna have a virtual happy hour with some of the other participants from the Chicago Gallery Open who are just gonna come and say hi. Yeah, feel free to stick around. And yeah, thanks for coming, and check out the other programming we have over the weekend at chicagogalleryopen.org. So I think we're gonna, Liz, are you there?
I'm here. Oops. I'm going to start promoting some of those gallerists and the attendees to join us.
I can hear, I don't know if you could hear, there was some bass coming from my outside my window. I don't know if it came through the audio.